Put your hands behind your back.
I'm trying to tell you.
You're under arrest. Hands behind your back.
Okay, let me get up, please.
No, stay on the ground.
Please.
Back up
Please,
right now.
I just want to sit down, please.
Hands behind your back.
I'm trying to tell you.
Hands behind your back.
Let me get up, please.
No, stay on the ground.
Please.
Choking me, sir.
I'm trying to catch my breath. Please let me breathe.
Yo, get off him. He can't breathe.
Back up right
I
now.
just want to sit down, please. Please.
Hands behind your back.
I'm trying to tell you.
Hands behind your back.
Yo, get off him. He can't breathe.
Back up right now. Put your hands behind your back.
I'm trying to tell you.
You're under arrest. Hands behind your back.
Okay, let me get up, please.
No, stay on the ground.
The story opens on a routine evening patrol at 6 p.m. in a quiet La Crosse, Wisconsin neighborhood when Officer Dax Holland spots a face he knows all too well. Kavi Rell, a 35-year-old man wanted on multiple felony warrants for heroin and cocaine distribution and illegal weapons possession. The tension ignites the moment Holland calls out Kavi's name. Kavi denies his identity, his body language shifts from casual to defensive, and within seconds, he's pulling away from the officer's grasp. What should have been a straightforward arrest explodes into a chaotic struggle that sends a grill and propane fire pit crashing to the ground, draws a tense neighbor named Marek Vasan into the fray with clenched fists, and sets the stage for a he said legal battle over the use of force. One man insists he was choked and beaten. The other says he used only the force necessary to prevent a dangerous escape. The Axon Body 3 camera on Officer Holland's chest will be the final judge. Officer Dax Holland had been on patrol for about 3 hours when he turned onto Maple Street just after 6 p.m. The evening sun was still bright, casting long shadows across the quiet residential neighborhood. Kids were riding bikes, a few people were out watering their lawns. Everything seemed normal. Peaceful, even. Holland slowed his patrol car as he passed a small house with a chain-link fence around the backyard. Something caught his eye. A man was standing near a grill, talking on his phone. He was wearing a dark navy t-shirt and shorts. His hair was pulled back in cornrows. Holland's instincts kicked in immediately. He knew that face. He pulled over and put the car in park. His mind raced through the mental files he kept of wanted individuals in the area. Then it clicked. Kavi Rell, also known as Kavi. Holland had seen his photo in the warrant database just a few days ago. Multiple felony warrants, heroin distribution, cocaine with intent to deliver, illegal possession of a firearm. This wasn't some low-level offender. This was serious. Holland stepped out of the car and adjusted his duty belt. His Axon Body 3 camera was already recording. He walked slowly toward the fence, keeping his movements calm and non-threatening. He didn't want to spook the guy. Not yet. Hey, Kavi, Holland called out in a casual tone like he was greeting an old friend. The man on the phone froze, his head turned slowly toward Holland, his eyes locked onto the officer. For a brief second, neither of them moved. Then Holland saw it, the shift in body language. Kavi's shoulders tensed, his jaw tightened, his free hand balled into a fist. Holland knew that look. He had seen it 100 times before. It was the look of someone deciding whether to fight or run. Kavi, I need to talk to you for a second, Holland said, keeping his voice steady. He opened the gate to the backyard and stepped inside. You got a minute? Kavi lowered the phone from his ear but didn't hang up. Who are you talking to? He said, his voice sharp. My name's not Kavi. Holland stopped a few feet away. Come on, man. I know who you are. You've got some warrants out. Let's just handle this easy, all right? No need to make it harder than it has to be. Kavi shook his head. You got the wrong guy. I'm not who you think I am. Holland's hand moved to his radio. He pressed the button and called for backup. He didn't say much, just his location and that he was making contact with a wanted subject. He kept his eyes on Kavi the whole time. Listen, Holland said, stepping a little closer. I'm not here to argue with you. I know you've got warrants, felony warrants, heroin, cocaine, weapons. This isn't going away just because you say you're someone else. Kavi's eyes darted toward the house behind him, then back to Holland, then to the gate. Holland saw the wheels turning in his head. Kavi was calculating his options. Could he run? Could he get inside the house before the officer grabbed him? Could he talk his way out of this? Holland saw Kavi's weight shift to his back foot, his muscles coiled like a spring, and in that moment, Holland knew. This wasn't going to be peaceful. This wasn't going to be easy. Don't do it. Holland said firmly, don't make this worse for yourself. But Kavi wasn't listening anymore. His breathing quickened. His fists clenched tighter. He took one small step backward, testing Holland's reaction. Holland moved his hand toward his belt, ready to grab his handcuffs. Kavi, put your hands where I can see them. Now. Kavi's eyes narrowed. I told you that's not my name. And then, in a flash, everything changed. Kavi took another step back, and Holland could see the panic rising in his eyes. The casual conversation was over. Whatever slim chance there had been for a peaceful resolution was gone now. Hands out of your pockets, Holland ordered, his voice sharper now. Let me see your hands. Kavi pulled his hands out, but he didn't raise them. He held them at his sides, stiff and defiant. You're harassing me, man. I didn't do anything. I'm just standing in my yard. This your yard? Holland asked. Already knowing the answer, Kavi hesitated. I'm visiting someone. Who? None of your business. Holland shook his head. He had dealt with this kind of denial before. Some people thought if they just kept saying no, kept insisting they were someone else, the police would eventually give up and leave. But that's not how warrants worked. That's not how any of this worked. Kavi, I'm gonna say this one more time, Holland said slowly. I know who you are. I've seen your picture. I know about the warrants. You can cooperate right now, or I can put you in handcuffs the hard way. Your choice. Kavi's lip curled into a sneer. You don't know anything. You're just looking for someone to mess with. Holland took another step forward. He was close enough now that he could reach out and grab Kavi if he had to. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. I'm not doing that. You don't have a choice. I'm not him, Kavi shouted, loud enough that a few neighbors looked out their windows. My name's not Kavi. It's Lindsay. You got the wrong guy. Holland's jaw tightened. Lindsay. That was the name on the warrant too. Kavion Lindsay Rell. He was using his middle name to try to throw Holland off, but it wasn't going to work. Lindsay, Kavi, whatever you want to call yourself, Holland said. You're under arrest. Turn around. Kavi's breathing grew faster. His eyes flicked toward the back door of the house again. Holland saw it. He knew what was coming. Don't even think about it, Holland warned. But Kavi wasn't thinking anymore. He was acting on instinct. His body twisted toward the house, his legs tensed. He was going to run. Holland lunged forward and grabbed Kavi's right arm just as he started to turn. Stop. Don't move. Kavi yanked his arm back hard, trying to pull free. Get off me, you're hurting me. Holland tightened his grip and reached for his handcuffs with his other hand. Stop resisting. Kavi twisted his body, trying to shake Holland off. His free hand swung around, and Holland had to duck to avoid getting hit. The situation was escalating fast. Too fast. I said stop, Holland yelled. But Kavi wasn't stopping. He was fighting. His feet scrambled against the ground as he tried to pull toward the house. Holland held on, trying to control Kavi's arm, but the man was strong. Stronger than Holland had expected. Kavi threw his weight backward, and both men stumbled. Holland's boot caught on something. A loose brick, maybe, and he lost his balance for just a second. That was all Kavi needed. Kavi ripped his arm free and spun around, his eyes wild with desperation. I'm not going back to jail. And then he ran. Not toward the house, toward the grill. Holland didn't hesitate. The second Kavi broke free, the officer launched himself forward. His boots pounded against the cracked concrete of the backyard. Kavi was fast, but Holland was faster. He closed the distance in 3 long strides. Kavi's hand reached out toward the back door of the house, his fingers stretching for the handle. If he got inside, this would turn into a barricade situation. Holland couldn't let that happen. Stop! Police! Holland shouted. Kavi's fingers were inches from the door when Holland's hand clamped down on his shoulder. Holland yanked him backward with all his strength. Kavi stumbled, his feet tangling beneath him, and both men crashed to the ground. The impact was hard. Holland felt the air rush out of his lungs as they hit the concrete. Kavi twisted beneath him, thrashing like a wild animal. His elbow swung back and caught Holland in the ribs. Pain shot through the officer's side, but he didn't let go. Stop fighting, Holland yelled, trying to pin Kavi's arms. Get off me. Kavi screamed back. You're choking me. Holland wasn't choking him. He had one hand on Kavi's shoulder and the other reaching for his handcuffs. But Kavi kept twisting, kept fighting, kept screaming. I can't breathe. You're choking me. Holland could hear the words, but he knew they weren't true. Kavi was yelling at full volume. If he couldn't breathe, he couldn't yell like that. But Holland also knew what Kavi was doing. He was playing to the neighbors. He was creating a narrative. A woman's voice called out from a nearby window. "Hey, what's going on over there?" Holland didn't have time to respond. Kavi bucked his hips, trying to throw Holland off. The officer shifted his weight, pressing down harder to keep control. Kavi's hand shot out and grabbed at Holland's duty belt. His fingers fumbled for something, anything he could use. "Don't do that," Holland warned, grabbing Kavi's wrist and slamming it to the ground. Kavi's other hand swung wild, slapping at Holland's face. The officer turned his head just in time to avoid a direct hit. This wasn't just resistance anymore. This was assault. Holland managed to get one of Kavi's arms behind his back, but the man was too strong, too desperate. He twisted again and his shoulder slammed into the metal leg of the backyard grill. The grill tipped, then it fell. The crash was deafening. Metal clanged against concrete. Charcoal briquettes scattered everywhere. A propane tank rolled across the yard, and the metal grate landed with a loud clatter right next to Holland's head. Neighbors started coming out of their houses now. Doors opened. Voices called out. Someone was filming on their phone. And then Holland saw him. A young man in a gray t-shirt, short hair, athletic build. He stepped into the yard, his fists clenched at his sides. His face was twisted in anger. He was staring right at Holland. Marek Vossen. Holland didn't know his name yet, but he knew the look. This guy was about to get involved. "Stay back," Holland shouted at him. "This is police business." But Marek didn't move. He just stood there, watching, his body tense like a coiled spring, and Kavi kept fighting. The backyard was a war zone now. The overturned grill lay on its side, charcoal scattered like black confetti across the concrete. The propane fire pit had tipped over too, and broken glass from a decorative lantern crunched under Holland's knee as he struggled to keep Kavi pinned down. Kavi was still screaming, "You're hurting me. Somebody help, he's beating me." Holland wasn't beating him. He was trying to get control of his arms so he could get the handcuffs on. But every time he got close, Kavi would twist or buck or swing, and they'd be back to square one. More neighbors came out now. An older woman stood on her porch, her hand over her mouth. A man in a baseball cap held his phone up, recording everything. Two teenagers stood by the fence, whispering to each other and pointing. And Marek was still there, standing just a few feet away, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. "Back up," Holland yelled at him again. "I'm not going to tell you again." Marek's eyes flicked from Holland to Kavi and back again. He didn't say anything, but he didn't move either. He was deciding, weighing his options, trying to figure out if he should step in. Kavi saw him too. "Help me, man. He's choking me. I can't breathe." Holland's heart pounded in his chest. This was getting out of control. Fast. If Marek decided to interfere, this would turn into a full-blown riot. Holland would be fighting two people instead of one. And he was already struggling to handle Kavi alone. "I said stay back," Holland barked louder this time. Marek took one step forward. Holland's hand moved toward his radio. He needed backup. Now. But he couldn't let go of Kavi to key the mic. If he did, Kavi would be on his feet and running again. Or worse, he'd go for Holland's gun. Kavi's hand shot out again, this time toward the fire pit. His fingers closed around a jagged piece of broken glass. Holland saw it just in time. "Drop it," Holland yelled, grabbing Kavi's wrist and slamming it against the ground. The glass fell from Kavi's hand, but not before it sliced across his palm. Blood started to seep from the cut. Kavi screamed louder. "He cut me. He cut me with glass." Holland gritted his teeth. "You grabbed the glass. I didn't cut you." But nobody was listening to Holland. They were listening to Kavi. And Kavi was louder. Kavi was the one bleeding. Kavi was the one on the ground. The woman on the porch called out, "Should I call 911? "Yes," Holland shouted back. "Tell them officer needs assistance, Maple Street, now." Kavi kept thrashing. His feet kicked out, and one of his bare heels caught Holland in the shin. Pain shot up the officer's leg, but he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. Marek took another step closer. His hands were still clenched. His breathing was heavy. Holland could see the anger in his eyes, the confusion, the urge to do something. "Don't do it," Holland said, locking eyes with him. "I'm warning you. Do not interfere with this arrest." Marek's jaw worked. He looked at Kavi, still pinned on the ground, still screaming. Then he looked back at Holland. For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then finally, Marek took a step back. Holland exhaled. One problem down. But Kavi was still fighting. And backup still wasn't here. Where were they? Holland's arms were burning. He had been wrestling with Kavi for what felt like forever, but in reality it had probably only been 2 or 3 minutes. It didn't matter. 2 minutes of fighting a man who didn't want to be arrested felt like 20. Kavi was bigger than Holland had expected. Not taller, but solid, strong, and he was fueled by something Holland couldn't match, pure desperation. A man with felony warrants knows what's waiting for him. Years in prison, maybe a decade or more. That kind of fear makes people do crazy things. Stop resisting, Holland shouted for what felt like the 100th time. Kavi's response was to twist harder, to pull his arms in tighter, to make it impossible for Holland to get the cuffs on. Every time Holland got one wrist close to the other, Kavi would flex his muscles and break the hold. Holland's knee was on Kavi's back now, trying to keep him down. But Kavi kept pushing up, trying to get to his hands and knees. If he managed to stand, this would start all over again. "I can't breathe," Kavi yelled. "You're on my back. I can't breathe." Holland shifted his weight slightly, but he didn't get off. He couldn't. If he gave Kavi even an inch, the man would explode up and run. Or fight. Or both. The neighbors were still watching. More of them now. Holland could see them out of the corner of his eye. Some were recording on their phones. Others were just standing there, arms crossed, watching like it was a show. Marek was still in the yard too, though he had backed up a few feet. His fists were still clenched. His eyes were still locked on the struggle. Kavi's hand shot out again, this time grabbing at the scattered stones from the fire pit. He threw one. It missed Holland by inches and clattered against the fence. "Stop!" Holland yelled. Kavi grabbed another stone. Holland caught his wrist before he could throw it and slammed it down. The stone tumbled away. This was insane. Holland needed help. He needed another officer. He needed someone to control Kavi's legs while he worked on the arms. But backup still wasn't here. Holland's radio crackled. A voice came through. "Unit 47, ETA 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Holland could do 2 minutes. He hoped. Kavi bucked again, harder this time. Holland felt himself shift forward, his balance thrown off. Kavi sensed the opening and twisted his body, rolling onto his side. For a second, Holland lost his grip entirely. Kavi scrambled, his bare feet slipping on the concrete as he tried to stand. Holland lunged forward and grabbed him by the shirt, yanking him back down. They hit the ground again. This time, Kavi's elbow caught Holland in the jaw. Stars exploded in the officer's vision. His head snapped to the side. Pain radiated through his face, but he didn't let go. Kavi was breathing hard now, gasping for air. Not because he couldn't breathe, but because he was exhausted. Holland was exhausted too. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but he couldn't stop. Not yet. "You're making this so much worse for yourself," Holland said through gritted teeth. Kavi didn't respond, he just kept fighting. And then, finally, Holland heard it. Sirens. Backup was close. The sirens grew louder. Kavi heard them too. His eyes went wide, and his struggles became more frantic. He knew what was coming. More officers meant no chance of escape. More officers meant this was over. But instead of giving up, Kavi doubled down. "Help," he screamed at the top of his lungs. "Somebody help me! He's choking me! I can't breathe!" Holland's hand was nowhere near Kavi's neck. He had one hand on Kavi's shoulder, and the other trying to pull his arm behind his back. But Kavi kept screaming the words like a chant. "I can't breathe. He's choking me. Somebody record this." The neighbors were already recording. Holland could see at least 3 phones pointed at him. He knew how this looked. A white officer on top of a black man who was screaming that he couldn't breathe. It didn't matter that Kavi was yelling at full volume, which meant he was breathing just fine. It didn't matter that Holland wasn't using a chokehold. All that mattered was what people saw and what they heard. Marek stepped forward again. His fists were still clenched. "Get off him," he yelled. Holland's head snapped up. "Stay back, I'm not going to tell you again." "He said he can't breathe." "He's lying." Marek's face twisted in anger. "You know. You're on top of him." Holland didn't have time to argue. The sirens were right around the corner now. He could hear tires screeching as another patrol car pulled onto the street. Kavi took advantage of the distraction. He twisted hard to the left, and Holland's knee slipped off his back. Kavi tried to roll away, but Holland grabbed his shirt and pulled him back. "Stop moving," Holland shouted. "You're killing me," Kavi screamed back. A second patrol car skidded to a stop in front of the house. Holland heard a car door slam. Footsteps pounded toward the backyard. Relief flooded through him. Finally, help was here. A female officer appeared in the yard, her hand on her holster. She took in the scene in an instant. Holland on top of Kavi, the overturned grill, the broken glass, the crowd of neighbors, Marek standing way too close. "I need you to control his legs," Holland called out to her. The female officer moved quickly, grabbing Kavi's ankles and pinning them down. Kavi immediately started kicking, trying to throw her off. "Stop resisting," she ordered. "I'm not resisting. They're beating me." Holland finally got Kavi's right arm behind his back. He pulled out his handcuffs and snapped one bracelet around Kavi's wrist. One down, one to go. But Kavi wasn't done. He pulled his left arm in tight against his body, tucking it under his chest so Holland couldn't reach it. "Give me your other hand," Holland demanded. "No, you're hurting me." The female officer shifted her weight, pressing down on Kavi's legs to keep him from kicking. "Sir, if you don't stop resisting, this is only going to get worse." Kavi turned his head toward the crowd. Tears were streaming down his face now. Whether they were real or fake, Holland couldn't tell, but they were effective. "Please," Kavi sobbed. "Somebody help me. They're going to kill me." Marek took another step forward. The female officer saw him and pointed. "Sir, step back right now or you're going to be arrested too." Marek froze. His fists slowly unclenched. He took one step back, then another. But his eyes never left Kavi. Holland used the moment of distraction to reach under Kavi's chest and grab his left wrist. He yanked it out and twisted it behind Kavi's back. Kavi screamed, "Ow, you're breaking my arm!" Holland wasn't breaking his arm. He was just pulling it into position. But Kavi kept screaming anyway. Finally, Holland got the second cuff on. Click. Kavi was secured, but he was still screaming. With both hands cuffed behind his back, Kavi's options were limited. But that didn't stop him from trying. He twisted and bucked, trying to roll onto his side. The female officer kept her hand on his shoulder, keeping him down. "Sir, stop moving," she said firmly. "You're only making this harder on yourself." Kavi ignored her. He craned his neck around, looking for the cameras. "Are you recording this?" he shouted to the neighbors. "Make sure you're recording. They're beating me. I didn't do anything." Holland stood up, breathing hard. His ribs ached where Kavi's elbow had caught him. His jaw throbbed. His knee was scraped and bleeding from the broken glass. But at least it was over. Or so he thought. Kavi suddenly jerked his head back and spat. A thick glob of saliva hit Holland square in the chest, soaking into his uniform shirt. Holland's jaw tightened. "Did you just spit on me?" Kavi grinned, his teeth stained red from where he'd bitten his own lip during the struggle. "Yeah. What are you going to do about it?" The female officer's eyes widened. "Sir, that's assault on an officer. You just made this a whole lot worse." Kavi didn't care. He was past the point of rational thinking. He was angry, humiliated, and desperate people do stupid things. He twisted his body again, this time rolling toward the female officer. His hands were cuffed behind his back, but his legs were still free. He kicked out, trying to catch her in the shin. She stepped back just in time. "That's enough." Holland moved in and grabbed Kavi's shoulder, pressing him back down to the ground. "Stay down." But Kavi kept moving. He was like a fish out of water, flopping and twisting and refusing to stay still. And then Holland saw where his eyes were focused, the female officer's duty belt, specifically her holster. Kavi's cuffed hands were straining toward it, his fingers reaching, grasping. Holland's blood ran cold. "He's going for your gun." The female officer's hand immediately went to her holster, securing her weapon. She stepped back, out of Kavi's reach. "Subject attempted to grab my firearm," she called out, her voice sharp and official. Holland's knee pressed harder into Kavi's back. "You just tried to grab a cop's gun. Do you understand how serious that is?" Kavi's face was pressed against the concrete now. His breathing was ragged, but he still managed to speak. "I didn't grab anything." "You're lying." Holland shook his head. This guy was unbelievable. Even with the body cam recording everything, even with witnesses everywhere, he was still trying to lie his way out of it. A third officer jogged into the yard, followed by a fourth. They took in the scene and immediately moved to help. One of them knelt down next to Kavi's legs, while the other stood watch over the growing crowd of neighbors. "We need a second set of cuffs," Holland said. "He's strong. One set isn't going to hold him." The third officer pulled out another pair of handcuffs and passed them to Holland. Working together, they double-cuffed Kavi, looping the second set through the first to create a tighter, more secure restraint. Kavi groaned. "That's too tight. You're cutting off my circulation." Holland checked the cuffs. They were snug but not too tight. He could fit a finger between the metal and Kavi's skin. They were fine. "Circulation's fine," Holland said. Kavi kept groaning anyway. "I need a medic. I'm hurt. I'm bleeding." Holland looked at Kavi's hands. There was blood from the cut he'd gotten when he grabbed the broken glass. It wasn't a deep cut, but it was bleeding. "Fire department's already on the way," the female officer said. Kavi turned his head toward the neighbors again. "Get his badge number. All of their badge numbers. I'm suing all of you." Holland didn't respond. He just stepped back and let the other officers take over. His part was done. Now it was time to let the medics check Kavi out and start the paperwork. But even as they lifted Kavi to his feet, he kept shouting, "Police brutality. Somebody record this. I'm a victim. I didn't do anything wrong." The officers lifted Kavi to his feet, supporting him on either side. His legs were shaky, whether from exhaustion or adrenaline, Holland couldn't tell, but Kavi was still talking, still shouting, still playing to the crowd. "Look at what they did to me," he yelled, holding up his hands so the neighbors could see the double cuffs. "This is illegal. You can't cuff someone like this." One of the officers, a veteran named Martinez, shook his head. "It's not illegal. You're a big guy and you've been fighting us. The double cuffs are for our safety and yours." Kavi ignored him. "I want your badge numbers, all of you. I'm filing a complaint." "That's your right," Martinez said calmly, "but you need to calm down first." Kavi's face twisted in rage. "Calm down? You jumped me, you beat me, you choked me, and you want me to calm down?" Holland stepped forward. "Nobody choked you. Nobody beat you. You resisted arrest. You fought us. You grabbed broken glass. You tried to go for her gun." He pointed at the female officer. "All of that is on camera." Kavi's eyes narrowed. "I don't care about your camera. Cameras lie. Cops lie." Holland didn't argue. There was no point. Kavi had already decided on his version of events, and no amount of evidence was going to change his mind. Not right now, anyway. The fire truck arrived a few minutes later, followed by an ambulance. 2 paramedics climbed out, carrying their medical bags. They walked over to Kavi and set their bags down on the ground. "We need to check you out," one of them said. "Where are you hurt?" Kavi rattled off a list. "My back, my arms, my wrists, my hands, my face, my neck, everywhere." The paramedic nodded and started his assessment. He checked Kavi's pulse, his breathing, his pupils. He looked at the cut on Kavi's hand and cleaned it with antiseptic. It wasn't deep. A few butterfly bandages would be enough. "Anything else?" the paramedic asked. "My neck," Kavi said. "He was choking me. I think he crushed my windpipe." The paramedic gently pressed on Kavi's neck, feeling for any swelling or damage. "Does this hurt?" "Yeah." "How about when you swallow?" Kavi swallowed. "No." "Can you breathe okay?" "I guess." The paramedic stepped back. "Your airway is fine. No swelling. No bruising. No signs of trauma to the neck." Kavi's face darkened. "That's because you're covering for them." The paramedic sighed. "Sir, I don't work for the police. I work for the fire department. I'm here to make sure you're okay. And medically, you are." Kavi muttered something under his breath. Meanwhile, Holland walked over to his patrol car and sat down in the driver's seat. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off now, and his body was starting to realize how much it had been through. His jaw ached, his ribs ached, his knee was still bleeding. The female officer, whose name was Ortiz, walked over. "You okay?" Holland nodded. "Yeah, you?" "I'm fine. That was intense." "Yeah." They stood in silence for a moment, watching as the paramedics finished checking Kavi. Then Ortiz spoke again. "He really tried to grab my gun." "I know." "That's attempted disarming of an officer. That's a felony." Holland nodded. "Add it to the list." Ortiz looked at him. "You sure you're okay?" Holland exhaled slowly. "I will be. Just need a minute." Ortiz squeezed his shoulder and walked away. Holland sat there for another few minutes, letting his heart rate come down, letting his breathing slow. Then he stood up and walked back over to where Kavi was standing with the other officers. Kavi glared at him. "I'm gonna own you," he said. "I'm gonna sue you for everything you've got." Holland met his gaze. "That's your right. But the camera doesn't lie, Kavi, and it saw everything." Kavi's jaw clenched, but he didn't say anything else. An hour later, Kavi was sitting in the back of a patrol car, his double cuffs secured to a restraint bar. The paramedics had cleared him medically. The cut on his hand was bandaged. His neck was fine, his breathing was fine, he was fine. He just didn't want to admit it. Holland stood outside the car with Martinez and Ortiz, filling out the incident report on a tablet. His fingers moved slowly across the screen, documenting everything. The time, the location, the initial contact, the resistance, the struggle, the attempt to grab Ortiz's weapon, the spitting, all of it. Martinez leaned over and read the screen. "This guy's looking at serious time." Holland nodded. He already had felony warrants. Now we're adding resisting arrest causing injury, battery to an officer, disarming attempt, and probably bail jumping. Bail jumping? He was out on bond for the original charges. This violates that. Martinez whistled. He just ruined his life. Holland didn't respond. He just kept typing. When he was done, he walked back to his patrol car and pulled up the bodycam footage on his in-car computer. He scrolled through the video, watching the entire encounter from start to finish. The initial contact, Kavi's denial, the grab, the struggle, the overturned grill, the broken glass, Kavi screaming about being choked, the spitting, the reach for Ortiz's gun. All of it was there, clear as day. Holland saved the footage and uploaded it to the department's server. Then he called his sergeant. "Yeah, it's Holland. I need you to come down here. We've got a situation." 10 minutes later, the sergeant arrived. Holland walked him through everything, showing him the body cam footage, explaining the charges. The sergeant watched in silence, his arms crossed. When the video ended, he nodded. "Good work. You did everything by the book. Thanks. How are you feeling?" Holland touched his jaw, which was still sore. "I'll live." The sergeant clapped him on the shoulder. "Go get checked out by the medics. Then take the rest of the night off. I'll handle the paperwork from here." Holland didn't argue. He walked over to the ambulance, where a paramedic checked his jaw and his ribs and cleaned the scrape on his knee. Nothing was broken, nothing serious, just bumps and bruises. As he sat there getting bandaged up, Holland watched as Kavi was driven away in the back of Martinez's patrol car. Kavi was still shouting, still insisting he was innocent, still demanding badge numbers. But it didn't matter. The truth was on camera. And the camera doesn't lie. 6 months later, in December 2025, Kavi on Kavi, Rel stood in a courtroom and entered a plea. No contest. Resisting an officer causing injury, bail jumping. The other charges were dropped as part of the deal. The judge set sentencing for March 24, 2026, and Officer Dax Holland went back to work, knowing that he had done his job. He had served the warrant, he had made the arrest, and he had the body cam footage to prove that everything he did was lawful. The one thing you should never do if you're wanted? Run. Because the camera never lies. With both hands cuffed behind his back, Kavi's options were limited. But that didn't stop him from trying. He twisted and bucked, trying to roll onto his side. The female officer kept her hand on his shoulder, keeping him down.